Well, for me, I would say something to do with Lady Godiva, really. She's such a famous person and such a, with a strong connection to Coventry. Practically everybody's heard of Lady Godiva, even if they don't know the full story. But we have almost no information about her life. She was a real person. She owned the city or the town of Coventry, as it would have been at the time, in her own right. So she was quite an important person in the Anglo-Saxon period, but we've got very little, or almost nothing in fact, that relates to her personally. So it would be great to find an artefact that had a personal connection to Godiva. In the past, a ring was excavated in Coventry that was thought might have a connection to Godiva, but I don't think that was the case. But if we could find something like that, it would be great, I think.
So I presume the person who's asked about common storage mistakes are thinking about what they have at home, and there's some easy ways to look after your precious items at home. Keep them out of direct sunlight because that can really cause fading. Try and keep them in somewhere that's got an even temperature, so not your basement or not your attic, and that will also help with the environmental conditions in terms of not getting too damp. So if it goes too damp, you get risk of developing mould. If you go for somewhere like the attic where it might get very hot and damp and move between two different types of environment, you've got the fibres might stretch and contract, and that can cause tearing. So on the whole, keep somewhere, your wardrobe's fine, perhaps check it every now and again that you've got no pests come to eat it if it's organic material. And, if it is a precious item, look after it, but it's there to be enjoyed. You might as well look at it, wear it, whatever it might be. But yeah, if you want to look after it, those are the best sort of top advice.
Well, we do this in a number of ways, really. I mean, one key way is by making use of oral histories. That's something that I'm quite passionate about because I think it's really great to hear somebody's story told in their own voice and in their own words. So in our history gallery, for example, we've got a number of oral histories with people from all kinds of different communities. Many of them are from people who have migrated to Coventry, who moved to Coventry in the 1950s and 60s, telling stories about how they came here from different parts of the world, from India or the Caribbean, for example, and how they made new lives in the city, really, and their early experiences of settling here. What they found interesting about the city, what they liked, what they didn't like, how they were received by the locals. So I think those stories are really powerful. And today museums do much more in terms of what we call co-curation, which means that we work very closely with local communities to tell their stories. So they have an active role in not just commenting on individual objects or telling their own personal stories, but in terms of deciding how a theme is tackled. So, how we go about telling a story, what kind of objects we might include, what themes we cover. It's a much more active way of them being engaged and involved in a project. Now, this is something we think very carefully about when we're planning an exhibition or a display. So we think about things like how we write the museum text, for instance, to make sure that it's clear and understandable and can be easily followed by anyone who doesn't necessarily have a prior knowledge of the subject. We also look at physical access, in terms of how we lay the exhibition out. So we make sure that things are not positioned too high or too low. We think about if people have a visual impairment, how can we support them to enjoy the exhibition? So we might offer interpretation in different formats. We might offer a large text version, for example, or we might offer an audio guide. So that people can access the information about the object in different ways. So we also spend quite a lot of time consulting with communities as well to find out what they want to see from an exhibition. So we look at ways in which we can tell accessible stories so people can see themselves reflected in the stories that we tell in exhibitions. You know, so we collect objects from communities, you know, that help to tell their stories, and, you know, address the kinds of issues that they want to see us talking about, really.